Welcome to this new episode of the Business Telling Talks. We are very happy today to have with us Zeno Adami, the Global Brand Director for DeLonghi. Everybody knows DeLonghi. It is a small appliances manufacturer based in Treviso in Italy. So welcome, Zeno.
Thank you, Antonio. Thank you for having me.
Very happy to have a successful business storyteller here with us. So Zeno, let's kick off this talk with actually what you think about effective business storytelling. So, the Business Telling Talks has a purpose to bring to life effective and actionable business stories from successful tellers, people that are very good on turning an idea into a effective business story to activate an audience. So in your perspective, how could you define effective and actionable business storytelling?
Antonio, it's a pleasure being here with you. Of course, like telling stories, all about making the audience feel in a relationship with the storyteller. And actually, there is always like one thing that that I think of when I need in my work, in my daily life, to tell stories. Like all my job, it's about telling effective stories that can resonate either with consumers, with my internal stakeholders, with my boss, with my team, with the trade. And one framework that I always use and try to apply in every type of story I'm going to tell is make sure that the audience understand what you are going to tell them, and then make sure that they understood what you wanted to tell them. Of course, all in a very simple and natural way, because the key takeout that you want a story to have and to be effective into business is that the audience really understands what you're talking about, build a relationship while you're talking, and then take action based on the story that you're telling them. So every story needs to be crafted based on the type of audience that you have in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. As you know, in business telling, we say that we need a compass to create good, actionable stories. And exactly as you said, you need to tailor this compass based on your audience. And the final purpose of a business story is always to activate the audience. So we are definitely on the same page. And Zeno, I mean, I know you have gazillion of great, actionable stories, but do you have anyone that you would like to share with us that do you think could be interesting for the audience to really understand how a global brand director, an effective marketer, build a story and activate the audience in an effective way?
So there are different angles I could talk about, but the one that I would like to chat with you today is about the story of the transformation of DeLonghi. DeLonghi has been is a company based on a family of entrepreneurs that founded the company many years ago. And we play in the small domestic appliances, and we have been growing in that domestic appliances segment year over year. And we became, especially like in the recent years, the #1 espresso coffee machine manufacturer in the world globally. So by far the biggest one. Of course, and you know probably better than me, being a developer of a product and just selling the product in nowadays consumer's eyes is not enough anymore. We really need to be able to transform and to pass the experience of day by day usage of the product and transform them into experiences that the consumers can live at home. That's why we need in DeLonghi, we focused a lot in the past year and a half, especially in moving from small domestic appliance with extremely highly developed technology and a lot of R&D investment into products that can transform daily life. And that is a story in itself. That is a story that we are telling and we told initially internally, and now we started doing externally. So together, like with our agency partner, we developed this framework, this concept that is called the art of transformation, that really wanna showcase how, making the example of coffee, for example, DeLonghi machines are really the enabler of a transformation from the raw materials, such as coffee beans, that are passed into the machine and then transformed into an infinite amount of recipes and drinks based on the different taste of people around the world. Because again, we have a global footprint. So really bringing to life in a very visually engaging way, in a copy crafted way.
Yeah.
We also developed like our own DeLonghi font, for example, to be
Wow.
able to pass that message and the story. Because consistency is key. One of the key issues that we try to face, and based also on the research that we have done, we found out that DeLonghi was perceived in different ways based on the countries, because based on the story that DeLonghi had in the different countries. For example, in Australia, which is by far the most advanced coffee market in the world.
Australia, wow.
Australia, yes. We think as Italians that we
Yeah,
know
exactly.
everything about espresso.
Yeah.
We invented espresso, but more than 100 years ago. But nowadays, US, Australia, even UK, France, they are way more advanced than us in terms of coffee knowledge and coffee culture.
Okay.
So the challenge was really to understand like what are all these different markets, what does DeLonghi means in all these different markets, and find a story that could fit the need and the understanding of every single consumer into these different markets. And so, for example, I was saying Australia, DeLonghi, by definition, was quintessential coffee because we enter many years ago the country with coffee machines. So DeLonghi for them is coffee. In Italy, to make another example, it's not like that. DeLonghi has a strong heritage of comfort and air conditioning product, the Pinguino of this
Yeah.
world. And so because coffee now is growing way faster than what air conditioning is doing, we are with this art of transformation story where we really want to portray the machine as a transformative element and into the and as a transformative element for the consumers. We really want to tell the story on how DeLonghi transformed coffee beans into recipes. And this is fascinating. This is fascinating first because coffee is by definition like a very lifestyle topic that let's say allows us to tell the story in the best possible way, and consumers are very receptive to it.
Wow, sounds. But how did you come with this idea of if I understood correctly, the art of transformation? You're moving from,
So,
if I think about DeLonghi, I'm a user and a customer of DeLonghi. It's more like for me small appliances, no, like the machine on its own. Now that you're telling me this idea of transforming raw materials somehow, it's very inspiring. So how did you come with this concept transformation?
so we first did a very strong analysis also on how coffee, how the coffee story is told around the world from the different players. Because, you know, like the coffee can be divided into three main buckets, if you want, the coffee world into three main buckets. You have coffee beans producers, so the Lavazza, Starbucks, Nespresso. Nespresso is a coffee producer more than a
Yeah.
machine producer. And we studied how they are approaching the category on their end. And then, of course, you have the coffee shops and bars that are and baristas and or baristas wannabe that are telling the story of recipes. Like coffee is like it's the quintessential element that can be included into an infinite amount of recipes. So we study how those coffee shops and those baristas were crafting their story.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have the segment of the small domestic appliances, so coffee machine producers, like the Breville, Sage, Smeg, and all of that. And we found out that, yes, there were beautiful stories told in the world of coffee beans, like think about sustainability and like sourcing of coffee and all of that. Beautiful stories told from the recipe standpoint, but there was a lack of understanding and positioning on how these coffee beans can be actually transformed and how you need something that is actually treating the beans with care and with high technology, in order to actually be able to allow the coffee beans to express their potential at the maximum. And so we really wanted to tell the story that in order to have an amazing drink, you just don't need amazing beans, but you also need an amazing transformative agent.
Yeah.
Because like you cannot just put raw coffee beans into your drink.
Of course.
You need to transform them. And there are many variables, and I don't want to bore you with that, but like there are many variables involved, and we designed and we are designing our machines in order to handle those variables with the utmost care. So
Yeah.
telling and showcasing that story, bringing the outside, like the what's happening inside, outside, is key, because for consumers, they just see these fully automatic coffee machines as black boxes. Okay, so if you look at the design, for example, of the majority of the machines, you don't even see the coffee beans, because you have just these, let's say, little piece of plastic or metal. You open it and you pour the beans in. What we want to do, and what we did, and what we want to do more and more, is actually, for example, to show where the beans needs to be put, where the milk needs to be put, and showing how the coffee beans grinded are mixing with the milk, with the water that is inside the machine, and really beautifying this process. Because by beautifying this process, consumers will have an even better and visual understanding on how this process works, and they will have fun in the meanwhile. So it's really like an industrial way, if you want, to tell a story, and we're really having fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like from the way you're describing, it looks like it's a really fun process. And I love what you said about, unleashing the power of the coffee bean, right? And then you were saying really to bring this art of transformation also to the outside world. So my question would be, this idea of, you really believe on this transformation. I can see from the way you're telling this story. And how can you really make the whole organization believing that this is the right direction, and making the organization feeling that the art of transformation is going to be, the next step for the longi? How can you create believers around this story?
Well, so of course, and this is a very important point whenever we are telling a story. Of course, I'm bringing my experience, like working for large companies. Um, you cannot arrive, like you can have the best ideas in the world, but if you don't have a strong story to support it, and you are not able to tell the story in a way that like makes your audience a believer, as you were saying in
Yeah,
your story, you are really not going anywhere. And yes, of course, it's incredibly important. Our job as marketer is to tell stories for the consumers, but I would like to underline the importance of building stories first and foremost for the internal organization,
of course.
for like the leadership team, for the CEO, for the board of directors, for the sales force. Okay, if they are not the ones like that fully embraced and understood the story you want to tell, it's going to be very difficult to tell the story down the road, like to trade and to consumers. So, for example, visual aids are and videos are a great way. The art of transformation, and you can see it like also on the DeLonghi LinkedIn page and all of that. We partner with a strong visual ad and design agency that helped us craft this story, and we brought to life the transformation of coffee, and not only coffee. And now and later I will tell coffee in 3D. These elegant videos that are really like in a way showing the material aspect of the coffee and how by entering the machines are transformed, and how visually water and milk are mixing, like just by visualizing that process in a very elegant and compelling way. People are really understanding, oh, okay, no, there is an art in it. There is like a really an art mixed with the technology aspect that goes into it. So everything that is visual is an enabler to tell the story. And the second thing that I would say is, if you are showing your audience, and I am in a global role, so whenever I'm talking, I'm not just talking like to Italians, but at all the time, I'm talking to different countries and different marketing teams that have also different personal understanding of what coffee is, for example. So making sure that you use a language, either visual or talking or examples that really resonates with them based on their understanding of coffee, and here studying and experiences those markets is key, really makes the story more smooth, more relatable for the audience, and in the end, it grants you like a full embracing of the story that you want to tell. And I have actually a funny example from this. It's actually coming from a previous experience that I had. I was working on Gillette before. And
in Boston, right? You were in Boston,
in
right?
Rome and Boston, correct.
And Boston.
So this story actually comes from Rome. We had to really present a super turnaround plan. Gillette was a little bit suffering in the past years, and we really wanted to like reinforce the strength of the brand in the Italian market, and actually involving more and more the trade, our sales force. And so in order to do that, and it was just an internal presentation, right? So you say, okay, you just threw a couple of charts in there, you tell the story and what it is. But in order to make them even more engaged, we presented the revamp of Gillette as a sort of a boxing match. We made like the example of Rocky. Okay,
Yeah.
Rocky is someone who everyone knows.
Of
okay,
course.
we're in Italy, but everyone around the world knows what Rocky is. We built a boxing ring where we actually present the full story
in the
on
office.
the boxing ring.
That
in
was
the office.
wow.
Correct? We completely dressed up like
No
a
way.
conference room as a boxing ring.
Okay.
And we actually had also like boxing gloves and all of that. And for every chapter of the story that we wanted to tell, we wanted to make sure that the audience was engaged. So we were inviting also the audience to come up and being with us while presenting every chapter and showing like how, for example, only by strong training you could get to the end result that you want. And we actually make them do exercises while we were there, because you know very well that like whenever you are telling the story and you also make your audience do something physical, it's much more likely
Definitely.
that they will remember what you are telling them. So by doing this parallel, I mean, of course, it's an investment in terms of time, money, and also like you need to be building a flawless type of story. But I'm telling you, the results are like nothing, like way above anything that you can tell just by using visual cues in a chart. So I just wanted to bring that example just to tell you that one, super important to build the stories that are also very involving for the internal audience, company audience first, before the consumer. And second, that by building stories that are also using physical action, you can also trigger like sales action afterward. So I thought it was a nice example to share.
No, definitely. It's I didn't know that. I thought, that when I was working in Pringles, we had the craziest team because we were doing like dressing up like superheroes based on the different initiative we were launching. But I never heard about creating a boxing ring to really make people feeling, what is the training and to have the feeling of this Rocky of, keep pushing to achieve new goals. So that's really showing how behind successful stories of successful brand, there is an organization of believers, or really people that understand the power of the transformation you're facing, of the idea you're talking about. And I really believe, and if you want, to tell us a little bit more about, I think that the purpose of the why behind you face this transformation, the why behind you are bringing to life the story, is probably the link to activate your internal audience, to make people feel that they are really facing something important. It's not only that what they do, is really they link back their work plan, their action to a bigger why. I think, it's that's
Absolutely.
the case also for this big the art of transformation for DeLonghi, right?
Absolutely, it's key because like let's not forget that like we are all human beings, and more than facts, we react to emotions. And this is true, like if I think about the DeLonghi consumers, for example, or potential consumers, the more you are able to tell why DeLonghi does what they do and our in like purpose, and we redefined very recently like all our equity pyramid, and our purpose is really we want to show and we want to transform home experiences into moments of pleasure. And everything that we do, whether it is like technology, R&D investment, but even more like from the communication standpoint, is really showcasing how our products are not just delivering coffee, but they are really um, transforming like something simple as having your daily or like your twice a day coffee in your home into a moment that is so seamless, so natural, and so well thought of that consumers are simply falling in love, even just by using the machine. Colors on the screen, uh, showcasing like these elements mixing. It's really key because like again, and we know very well like consumers are looking more and more than for products, they are looking for experiences. So why not giving an experience also while you are preparing your daily coffee? And all the elements and all the marketing touch points need to work in sync to tell that story. So that's why I was saying like we also created like a DeLonghi font. That's why like all these 3D visual cues and images. That's why also there is like the need of consistency because it's one of the key ingredients of a story. Once you have identified the story that you want to tell, you really need to make sure that you are true and consistent to the story that your brand wants to portray. Because if in a store in Romania or in a store in United States or in a store in China, the brand appears in a completely different way, not just by like logo. Logo is the easy one to maintain consistent, but the colors, the way you are telling the story, the videos you are using, the type of people you are using, it's key. So I would say that another important element is the consistency. And in the global role, this is like for everyone working at the moment, like in a global role, definitely you need to leave space for local adaptations.
Adaptation, yeah,
That's absolutely key because like consumers are
of
different.
course.
Okay, even if something like the same, like coffee beans are the same all over the world, but the way coffee is perceived and lived is different on a country by country basis. But the quintessential, the core of what DeLonghi is needs to be represented in the same way all over the world, of course. With local adaptation.
And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Nespresso also is doing a great job in this direction, right? There is kind of this consistency. It's kind of the flagship store they have. Wherever you go, you feel like you have a very similar experience. You really feel you get in a different space, a different environment, a little bit like the Apple store, right?
Apple, great example of it. Nespresso, great example of consistency. I actually have to say that Nespresso in the early 2000s democratized espresso. Espresso was something that everywhere in the world was only accessible outside of home. What Nespresso did was actually bringing the espresso as a beverage inside the home. So that's what they did really well, and actually what they keep doing. In DeLonghi, we just want to showcase that there is a different way to bring the espresso at home, that is starting from the raw beans instead of capsules. So that's the key.
The key element.
Dyson is also like a great example on how you could take something as simple as like a hair dryer, okay, or as a vacuum cleaner, and make it an object of desire. Again, of course, great investment in technology, great investment in R&D, but most of all, it's all about branding and consistency. Of course, if you don't have a strong product, you can tell all the stories that you want. But you are not going anywhere. But if you have a strong product and you are not able to tell the story in a consistent way, you are not going anywhere.
Anyway.
Two things need to work in sync.
The right mix, yeah. Zeno, I mean, I got very intrigued by the boxing one. I'm still thinking about seeing you boxing in the Gillette ring. But I mean, we have a kind of 5-6 minutes to the end of the talk, and really the time flew away so fast. And you share with us the story of the art of transformation that goes, I think, beyond the coffee. It's the art of transformation of every kind of raw material. I think that they can fit in the art of transformation also the famous pinguino, anything that can transform some material into something else. So I think it's a very broad concept. And if for the audience that are listening to this talk, which are for you, out of what you told us, the 3 key elements you would like to highlight, really like the game changer in the way that the tellers, in this case is you as a global brand director, but could be anyone, any business, business player telling a story, in the way that these tellers can become more effective on activating the audience. Because as you said at the beginning, if the story doesn't trigger any action in the audience, it's not a business story. It's just an entertaining story. It's a Netflix documentary or Netflix series, whatever. So which are your recommendations to really make people feel that these are the 3 key elements you should keep in mind to turn a story into an actionable story?
So I would say the first element, and that is true like for every type of story you want to tell, the story needs to be simple. If a story is not simple, and it requires a lot of work to make a story simple.
Yeah.
Like it's actually
less is more. Yeah.
We believe that like if we say tons of words or like we make it like a very like consequential and rational, like we take the most out of it. That is partially true, but the most important thing is that you need to be able to tell your story like in a very simple way.
Very simple.
And for example, I think the art of transformation and just saying, like for example, in DeLonghi, we transform things and we unleash the power of raw materials into like end product. That's a very simple to understand. I'm sure that like even if somebody never drank coffee, or like never interacted with a machine, seeing that type of machine as something that is transforming for the better one product, that's really key. So your visuals, your videos, your story needs to be telling an incredibly simple story that potentially you are able to tell just 15, 20 words, okay?
Yeah.
Like to start. So the core needs to be really simple to understand. The second thing that I think is very important, and I have always been a big believer in that, believe much more in emotional stories rather than functional stories. Function is, I would say, the base that you need to have. Like you need to have like your uh, key benefit and reason to believe, like well crafted, but overall you always need to add an emotional layer to it, especially more and more in nowadays where we are bombarded like with different ads, different messages, different stories. Like content production is like through the roof, and as we speak, probably there are many and many, many, every second, many, many videos of content out there.
Yeah.
The ones that are the most successful are the ones that are able to tell at best an emotion. So showcasing the emotion of what triggers you drinking a coffee, what type of background you have, so that like you might recall your first coffee, for example, or your first cappuccino. How was it created? Like emotions in a story are in key in order to actually also trigger memory and action from the from the audience. And
You
then
say, I mean, on this one, if you give me like 10 seconds, there was I went in a training with a famous inspirational speaker and leadership coach. He was saying, in stories, emotion is motion. When you're able to kind of transform all your numbers, all your wording, all your concept into kind of emotional element, emotional concept, people feel that they want to move towards what you are creating. So to activate them is much easier if you're able to touch a little bit from an emotional side, you know, the attention they have towards your story. So I fully agree with what you said. I mean, it's try to have this touch of emotion is a game changer. Yeah.
absolutely. Those are the things that like are easier to be also remembered.
Of
Like an
course.
emotion, you lived it, you live it, and you have it in you.
Yeah.
Functions and numbers are a little bit trickier to be
Dry. Yeah.
remembered,
Yeah.
not with emotion. And the third element, to conclude on your invite, you really need to understand like the audience that you have in front of you. That will be my third biggest piece of advice. If you are telling stories that do not resonate, like you can put simplicity, you can put emotions, but what might be an emotion for you, it's not a given that is an emotion for the audience. So you really need to understand what are the type of lived situation, what is the cultural background,
Yeah.
what is like the objective that the audience have in front of you in that specific moment, and craft the story in a way that resonates with the audience you have. And this is especially even more true as a global leader when you are speaking with an incredibly diverse crowd. So, for example, making cultural references that might be relevant only in Italy, but are not relevant at all in Australia, in the US, New Zealand, or China, really detracts from the power of the story that you want to tell. So you really need to put a lot of thinking into making sure and asking yourself, is this story has this story the potential to be understood
Yeah.
by the audience that has a different background than I have? So these three elements, simplicity, emotions, and cultural relevance, like readiness of the audience and capability for the audience to understand the story you want to tell, those are all things that need to be put into the story, the business storytelling. And this is true not only for internal audience or for consumers, but also like, for example, if you are a entrepreneur who has an amazing idea, wants to open a startup and all of that, and you need to pitch to venture capitalists.
Of course.
Not all
It's the same.
venture capitalists have the same understanding that you have. So making sure that you always put yourself in your audience shoes and you understand what could trigger them, it's incredibly important.
100%. I mean, that's what we usually say, the audience-driven story. I mean, know your audience, put your audience first, and design your story to create content, not just for you to tell a story, but to provide them what they need to take the action you're looking for. So you phrase it very well. And actually, even in the startup world, if you think about the elevator pitch, the three key elements that you just highlighted, three key takeouts, are exactly the backbone of any elevator pitch. It has to be simple, it has to be fast, you have sometimes few seconds. You need to leave an emotion, because if I just tell you numbers, it doesn't really turn around your audience to say, okay, I felt something for what I heard. And the simplicity you are opening is coming only if you know your audience so well that you know the word you have to use to activate them, or to activate the person in the elevator with you. Because if you don't know that, you overload with words and numbers, and it doesn't come, the simplicity you were talking about doesn't come along well. Zeno, really, I mean, unfortunately, this half an hour is gone. I think really you apply, like reverse engineering, you apply these three key takeouts on your story today. It was very simple. At least for me, it was emotional to follow the story of the ring, and I'm still laughing about that. And the art of transformation is really something inspiring. Even for people that don't know the DeLonghi equity so well, but the art of really turning around ingredients and raw material into something different is beautiful. And you express in a very easy and understandable way. So the audience, I think, felt, that came first to really understand what you were referring to. So
Yeah,
really,
and
thanks
in
a
fact,
lot.
Antonio, of course, there is an ingredient that you need to sparkle all over the stories. It's passion. If you don't
Of
have
course.
passion for the story you are telling, it's going to be very difficult to have the audience then take action. So you can build the most simple story with emotions and all of that, but if you don't have passion and you don't actually express that passion through your body language, through your wording, through your face, through like your attitude, it's going to be very difficult to then get an answer and emotion from the audience you have in front of you.
Zeno, really. So let me share a very passionate thank you for what you told us. It was very insightful and eye-opening. And I really hope to have you again in a future BusinessTelling talk, maybe to see how the result came along of this, the art of transformation, and maybe to talk about any other project. So let me thank you again, and have a great day. See you soon.
Thank you, Antonio. Ciao.
Ciao.